Hi, and welcome to the Exceptional Average. My today's guest was Cody Simmons, and Cody Simmons is a CEO of a company called DermaSensor. And DermaSensor is the skin cancer evaluation device, which helps doctors to evaluate skin cancer or suspicious skin cancer cells in a couple of seconds. You will see a demo in this podcast where Cody will show you how easy it is actually to diagnose or look into suspicious cell and to scan yourself, right? Uh, Also, we jumped into a little bit of AI in healthcare and what Cody predicts will happen in the future. And he also mentioned that the future is now. So if you are interested in listening to a podcast where we discuss how technology is actually saving lives in a real environment and real world and it has real impact, this episode is perfect for you. So enjoy. Ciao.
Think, GP, family doctors, internal medicine, gynecology to assess skin lesions more effectively because they're really the front line for a patient's question of what do you think about this suspicious mole? Should I go see a dermatologist or not? We got this new device. It's been shown to be very effective at diagnosing skin cancer risk, assessing risk to help inform me as your doctor on what to do. So let's go ahead here. The whole process is completely non-invasive and harmless. It just takes a minute. So the first step is a calibration step. So we're going to do 5 non-invasive tissue samples. Each one of these recordings is assessing about a millimeter of tissue non-invasively. And you can see I'm picking it up and putting it back down to assess different parts of the lesion. The same way a pathologist under a microscope, you can see the FDA cleared algorithm did immediate analysis, great monitor. So that's a 97% chance of being benign.
Hello, Cody, and welcome to the Exceptional Average.
I'm excited to join today. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, me too, Cody, because I'm so excited. We will be discussing the topic which I haven't discussed yet on my podcast, which is a skin cancer. Is that correct?
That's our focus.
Yeah, that's our focus. And you are the CEO of a company called DermaSensor in United States. I'm not sure if it's popular in Europe. If not, then we will make it happen. And let's do some PR here as well. But first of all, I would like to jump into the skin cancer statistics, which I have in front of me. And I see that skin cancer is a number one cancer or most common cancer in the United States. And I'm not surprised that a device like DermaSensor or a company like a DermaSensor, which is offering a device like this, is actually coming from States. But can you describe from your own words, what is DermaSensor about and how does it work?
Sure. So we've been focused for over a decade now on, delivering a diagnostic tool that can equip non-specialist clinicians, think, GP, family doctors, internal medicine, gynecology, to assess skin lesions more effectively because they're really the front line for a patient's question of what do you think about this suspicious mole? Should I go see a dermatologist or not? Right. That's kind of they're the front line for making those decisions. But by definition, they are not specialists in dermatologic conditions. They're not experts, and so studies show that their performance is below that of dermatologists, so that there's a lot of room for them to improve in terms of detecting more cancer, but also being able to more effectively rule out benign lesions that concern them but are ultimately benign. And so that's really what our tool has been focused on, equipping clinicians to detect more skin cancer, but also rule out or confirm as benign lesions that look suspicious, but that they're actually fine. Because right now in primary care, there's about 30 to 50 referrals or biopsies for lesions suspicious for melanoma, 30 to 50 being done for every one melanoma diagnosed. So think about that. That's only a 2 to 3% hit rate, right? So the large majority of those are necessary, but also primary care providers, GPs, are missing about a third of melanoma. So they miss about a third of melanoma, but they're also doing tons of unnecessary referrals. So that's really the problem that we've been focused on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and to me, it's Really interesting to understand, like, how does it work? Like, what's the technology behind the DermaSensor?
It's a type of it's called elastic scattering spectroscopy. So the technology, most of the development of it in the early days occurred at Boston University. So that we worked with them to build the early prototypes that were literally the size of microwaves and weighed 30 pounds. And there's a lot of publications showing the technology was
Hmm.
very powerful for non-invasively diagnosing malignant tissue. But for us, the big challenge was how do you miniaturize a 30-pound scientific instrument into something that can be a commercial product? So, it took us years and millions of dollars to do that miniaturization, and then years more to about $20 million to conduct, several clinical studies with thousands of patients, kind of showing the performance of the technology that, understandably is what regulators need to see to know that, okay, it performs on par with dermatologists. We've also and shown it performs superior to GPs, and accordingly, as you'd expect, thus benefits GPs management and decision making with suspicious lesions.
Hmm. And I see that from all the cases which are happening and all this, doctors actually using and treating skin cancer, like why is it so important that there is a tool like DermaSensor which is very fast when it comes to evaluation, suspicious cells?
Yeah, sure. And why don't I do a demonstration of the device here in a minute, and I'll explain the technology and
Hmm.
give the demo. But the importance of early detection is saving lives first and foremost. So
Hmm.
99% of melanoma, which is the most deadly skin cancer, is curable if detected early,
Hmm.
but also morbidity. So there's 5.5 million non-melanoma skin cancers diagnosed in the U.S. Basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. They aren't very high fatality rates. There's about 10,000 deaths each year from those two skin cancers of the
Hmm.
5.5 million, but there's a lot of very rough surgeries from
Hmm.
cutting out all those skin cancers. So obviously, if you can detect those earlier on, then it's less invasive surgeries, especially they're on sun exposed areas. So it's often on the face and the hands
Hmm.
and the shins and areas that are really tough to cut a lot of tissue out. Um, so that's importance of having a tool like this that's quick and easy to use.
Hmm.
As you said, right? Like, why this kind of product? The other reason we spend so much time miniaturizing large devices for busy primary care doctors, their average consultation time in the United States is like 10 minutes.
Hmm.
So they can't spend 5 minutes using some big, especially expensive too. So we are like, all right, we need to develop a low cost, quick and easy device. And a lot of credit goes to our early medical collaborators who, are in practice day to day. They're not in kind of academic centers like they, high volume clinics. They get like, hey, every minute counts. And like this device cannot take more than a minute to operate. So that was really our focus. So the whole process is about 30 seconds, which I'll show you now from when you pick the device up to when you get a
Hmm.
result. So I'll act like I'm a doctor here, kind of speaking about my mole. I actually have a great
Okay.
kind of demo mole right on my forearm. So you can see, so let's say, okay, I'll act like I'm the doctor. Okay, Mr. Simmons, you mentioned you're worried about this mole, that you think maybe it's getting a bit larger. I really don't think there's many features there suggestive of melanoma,
Hmm.
but I'm not a dermatologist, so I'm not that confident that it's benign. We got this new device. It's been shown to be very effective at diagnosing skin cancer risk, assessing risk to help inform, me as your doctor on what to do. So let's go ahead here. Uh, the whole process is completely non-invasive and harmless. It just takes a minute. So the first step's a calibration step, making sure that nothing's blocking the probe tip. And here I'll hold my phone up for a size comparison. So it's about the same size. Okay, so great. First step, calibration is complete. And that's just making sure the device is properly working, that nothing's blocking the probe tip, which it's not because I use a disinfectant wipe between patients, to clean it and make sure there's no makeup or dirt or anything. So, okay. So we're going to do 5 non-invasive tissue samples. Each one of these
Hmm.
recordings is assessing about a millimeter of tissue non-invasively. And you can see I'm picking it up and putting it back down to assess different parts of the lesion, the same way a pathologist under a microscope would look at different parts of the lesion under a
Mm-hmm.
microscope. But instead of sending it off to a pathologist, you can see the FDA cleared algorithm did immediate analysis, great monitor. So that's a 97% chance of being benign, were the
Mm-hmm.
results from the big FDA pivotal study with over 1,000 patients. Whereas a positive results investigate further with a score of 1 to 10 to
Mm-hmm.
indicate the degree of malignancy or confidence in malignancy range from 6% chance of being cancer up to 61% chance of being cancer. And just for reference point, the average dermatologist, their biopsy hit rate, right, the percent of biopsies that they do that are malignant is around 30, 35%. So for the high risk results, it's actually even more likely to be cancer than the average dermatologist biopsy. So it's certainly very helpful to generalists, right, that aren't specialized in dermatology to decide, do I need to refer this out to get further evaluation or not?
Thank you very much for the demo. It was really fast, I have to say. And Cody, can you explain to me? I'm just now out of curiosity. Like, what's the technology behind? How does it work? That in a couple of seconds I have the result. Like,
Yeah, so part of the benefit, so it doesn't use photos. There's a lot of issues with photos. There's
hmm
not a single image-based tool like this available in the United States that gives any kind of automated risk assessment. Because think you have to standardize lighting, distance. You have to use the same hardware, right? Because different smartphones, for example, those are different
yeah.
cameras. Um, and yeah, so and also there's been a lot of studies showing that image-based tools have biases and don't perform as well on skin of color, which is a big issue. So in contrast, for obvious reasons. So in contrast, we're not taking a photo or image of any sort of the surface of the lesion. We're using the spectroscopy technology. We're pulsing hundreds of wavelengths of light into the tissue,
Mhm.
so it penetrates nearly a millimeter in depth, and measuring how many photons come back or the
Mhm.
reflectance level at hundreds of wavelengths of light. So the same thing that a pathologist looks at under a microscope, right? They look for, is there a large nucleus in different cells? Are the melanocytes, what's melanocytes really dense? Is there a presence of condensed chromatin? So cellular and subcellular level features. That's what a pathologist looks for under a microscope.
Mhm.
Those are the same features that our spectroscopy technology is sensitive to um, when it's scanning these lesions. So
Mhm.
that's the principle of the technology.
And we live in an era of artificial intelligence, and the podcast is about artificial intelligence partially as well. Do you use any machine learning in your devices?
Yes and no. So there is a lot of machine learning and AI, techniques and tools that we use to develop the algorithm. So that's the yes part. The no part is it doesn't constantly change or evolve in any way. I mean,
hmm
this is a highly regulated diagnostic tool. No doctors, no patients would want the device manufacturer, oh, hey, now we think we have a better algorithm, we'll just change it. And like, okay, well, what new multi-year, multi-million dollar study did you do, like the one we recently, or well, the
hmm
six we recently submitted to the FDA, showing that it's actually a better algorithm and improves physicians' performance? And so, we expect to update it every 2 to 3 years.
hmm
Then that's what's really exciting is our current algorithm is only trained on a couple thousand lesions, right?
hmm
Because we had to enroll every single one by one in a study, because technology like this isn't part of clinical care at all. It's not like taking photos where doctors do that all the time. Because there's publicly available data sets with literally millions of skin lesion
hmm
images. So device is, we're already first in class and best in class in this category as the only device. But just imagine when it goes from 2,000 to 20,000 or 200,000. So that's, in terms of our launch, right? We just started delivering device 6 months ago. We already
hmm
surpassed, I think we're at like nearly 3,000 lesions scanned already. That's just in our first 6 months with our early users, have already surpassed our prior 10 years like clinical studies, what we developed, right? So, we expect by mid next year to be scanning around
hmm
15,000 lesions a month.
hmm
So we're, already have a great performing product, and there's also a lot of room for improvement. But to be clear, we can't just do that ad hoc whenever we want. you have to kind of go through steps with the regulatory bodies to actually show it's a better algorithm.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned FDA. Just for everybody who is not familiar, the FDA stands for U.S. Food and Drug Administration. So that's the
It's the U.S. version
company
of your CE mark. Yeah.
CE mark. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for the clarification. And
And we have CE mark too, but our commercial focus has really been on the US. But we're going to start doing a lot more work in Europe next year.
oh, so you are coming to Europe.
We'll be there soon. Don't worry.
That's good. I'm actually not really happy about it, but we also have skin cancer in Europe. So, for example, Germany
Oh,
is the
wow.
second highest country globally, right? Or United Kingdom is the third one from the statistics I have
It
seen.
is.
So,
And
unfortunately,
Germany's
it's
done a lot
everywhere.
of
Yeah.
great initiatives.
Hmm.
It's the only developed country we've seen in the world that has done reimbursements to kind of
Hmm.
reimburse doctors specifically for doing skin cancer exams. And there's also some reimbursement codes for insurance for the privately insured patient insurance companies that also reimburse the patients for doctors using tools like this. So Germany's actually really great. Um, like you said, given the problem of skin cancer in Germany and Europe broadly, Germany really encourages use of tools and tests like this. So that's definitely going to be one of the places we're focused on next year.
Okay. So good luck with the expansion. And Cody, why actually skin cancer? What's your story behind this?
Yeah, I mean, so we already spoke about, right? It's more common than other cancers combined. Melanoma is one of the deadliest, completely
Hmm.
preventable if 99% of the time curable if
Hmm.
detected early. Personally, you know, I experienced a lot of those same dynamics and the importance of early
Hmm.
detection. Both my mother and my aunt were both
Hmm.
diagnosed with early stage melanoma. Fortunately, early stage. So, I had my first biopsy as a teenager growing up playing tennis in Florida. So it was something that, as a family, we were
Hmm.
very aware of, being a problem and the importance of early detection. Because, if my mom and her sister hadn't been detected early, they might not be with us. So it was definitely something I was very focused on. I think, and part of why I went into the
Hmm.
oncology field with Genentech Roche. I did my graduate research in a bioengineering lab at Stanford and then spent a few years at Genentech, which is part of
Hmm.
Roche, is the European kind of parent company. Um, and then, yeah, this is the third health tech startup that I've been a part
Hmm.
of launching a new product. The second as co-founder. So I was very excited to be able to, stay in oncology and specifically join Dr. Maurice Ferre and the others to focus specifically on skin cancer, given the personal connection as well.
Hmm. And talking about technology and artificial intelligence, do you have any, or not idea, but idea you definitely have, but can you predict like how this whole thing will develop? For now, we see, for example, AI or artificial intelligence in skin cancer treatment, right? Some kind of algorithms and so on. Like, do you have any estimation, like what is the next step, like how this artificial intelligence can improve healthcare in the future?
Um, I mean, there's been a lot of efforts actually in Europe because the regulations it's different now, but they used to be very low for tools like this. It was just a uh, class one C mark, so it's the same as like a flashlight used for medical purposes because mechanically they're not dangerous, right? And so like, okay, well, clinically the doctors can use them or not, right? Technically they're not harmful. Their new regulations under MDR are much more in line with the FDA, which is, well, it's not just mechanically, okay, it's not invasive, fine, but the output and the use informs cancer decisions, right? So
Hmm.
they're much more highly regulated now. But of the ones in Europe that have done some work over the last few years, I know there's one big, I won't name the company, but there's been a company that's
Hmm.
been in use in Europe for a decade that's consumer use at home. So you take pictures just on whatever smartphone you
Hmm.
have and it does an analysis. Um, they did a big rollout with a European country. I think it showed there's more skin cancers detected uh, a little bit more, but there's tons of unnecessary referrals as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't very positive findings in terms of, patient use of tools like this or consumer use at home. Also, Memorial Sloan Kettering published a study showing like apps on smartphones, which most of them are in Europe. Some are like illegally marketed in the US. The average sensitivity for melanoma was 40%. So, for every 100 melanomas, it only correctly said high risk or malignant or whatever the app uses 40% of the time, which is very scary that any patients are using tools that basically don't work. The one in Europe actually that's been in real world use was one of like 3 or 4 of the 30 that did at all well, thankfully. But yeah, I don't know, so I think that patient use at home, there's been that kind of one meaningful example in Europe that has been doing that for a decade. Um, I think it's just challenging, especially like I mentioned, the issues with taking photos,
Mm-hmm.
and there's already millions of available photos. So I don't really see how that can get much better than it already is. I mean, unless there's major breakthroughs, even more breakthroughs, but there's already been so many in the last decade, so it's hard to imagine with image analysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Predictive AI. So yeah, I mean, we're big believers that turning frontline providers like primary care, like GPs, equipping them with tools that have specialist level capabilities is
Mm-hmm.
really going to be the main impact of diagnostic AI tools like this, right? I think some of the generative AI tools are very exciting, right? Ones that can passively listen to the clinical and exam and conversation and document all the notes and do
Mm-hmm.
everything so the doctor doesn't have to spend any time. I think that's very exciting, rightfully for clinicians, allowing them to really focus on patient care, not
Mm-hmm.
documenting things on a computer. But in terms of our world with like the predictive I think that's really uh, going to be the main impact. I think some consumer use and monitoring at home, but equipping the frontline provider to be able to more effectively evaluate conditions on par with specialists is where we're already seeing a big impact, like fundus, like the eyeball ophthalmology
Mm-hmm.
examinations. Now us with skin examinations. One of our advisors, Jason Bell, is a co-founder of Echo Health. It's an AI stethoscope that's shown they have cardiologist level diagnostic capabilities, same as us with dermatologists. They just hit 500,000 stethoscopes sold,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think some of this is like, oh, in the future, it's like not in the future. Like these AI tools are already having a widespread impact. I just don't think the
Mm-hmm.
general public often realizes, for example, that there's 500,000 clinicians. So I mean, probably I've seen one. I didn't even realize the stethoscope they were using was doing an AI analysis of
Mm-hmm.
that data and kind of telling the family doctor, hey, with cardiologist level accuracy, like there's disease or not disease.
Mm-hmm. Cody, it sounds great, and I wish you all the best with DermaSensor and your expansion. First of all, in States, and then come to Europe. I want to see, the healthcare being improved globally because I am aware that not every country has a good healthcare system. There are delays, and as you heard in this podcast, to everybody who is listening, the early treatment and the early evaluation and recognition on any suspicious cell is very important here because it saves lives. So thank you very much, Cody, for joining my podcast, and wish you all the best.